The Galactic Concord Hall had been built for one purpose and one purpose alone: to end wars before another star had to burn. Floating above the neutral world of Erinder, the station belonged to no empire, no alliance, and no king. Every wall had witnessed centuries of negotiations between civilizations that had once sworn to erase each other from existence. Every treaty signed there had become another chapter in galactic history. Today, history was expected to repeat itself. Across thousands of inhabited systems, billions watched the live broadcast with cautious hope. For the first time in 15 years, the Orion Dominion and the Human Coalition had agreed to sit at the same table. The Dominion arrived first. Their delegation marched into the chamber beneath banners of polished silver, surrounded by decorated officers wearing ceremonial armor that gleamed beneath the station lights. Every movement carried the confidence of an empire that had ruled nearly a quarter of the known galaxy for 300 years. At their center walked High Commander Zarek the Los. Tall, unmoving. His crimson eyes swept across the chamber with visible contempt. To him, peace negotiations were not diplomacy. They were simply another battlefield. One where weaker civilizations admitted defeat without firing another shot. The chamber doors opened once again. 3 humans entered. No escorts. No armor. No weapons. Admiral Evelyn Ward walked in first, her silver hair tied neatly behind her head, her posture perfectly straight despite decades spent on battlefields that had broken stronger people. Beside her came General Marcus Hale. His expression never changed. His sharp eyes quietly measured every entrance, every guard, every camera positioned around the chamber. Behind them walked Ambassador Sophia Reyes. She carried nothing except a slim tablet filled with treaty documents. No medals decorated their uniforms. No dramatic entrance announced their arrival. They simply walked to the negotiating table as though this meeting mattered more than appearances. Several Dominion officers exchanged amused smiles. One of them leaned toward another. "These are the legends." The second officer chuckled quietly. "I expected giants. I see exhausted politicians." The comments were not whispered carefully enough. The humans heard every word. None of them reacted. That silence somehow irritated the Dominion officers even more. High Commander the Los remained standing while the humans approached. He offered no greeting, no gesture of respect, only a long stare. "So," he finally said, "humanity sends 3 aging veterans to negotiate its future." Admiral Ward answered with the same calm expression. "Humanity sends those it trusts." A faint laugh spread among several Dominion commanders. Trust. Such an outdated concept. Power decided history, not trust. The delegates finally took their seats. Hundreds of recording drones hovered silently overhead while translators prepared every spoken word for transmission across the galaxy. Every civilization was watching. Every sentence would be remembered. The negotiations began quietly. Trade routes, border security, prisoner exchanges, mining rights. Human representatives spoke carefully, never raising their voices, never interrupting, never attempting dramatic speeches. Whenever disagreement appeared, Admiral Ward simply opened another document. Whenever accusations were thrown across the table, Ambassador Reyes calmly answered them with verified records. General Hale rarely spoke at all. But whenever he did, every sentence carried exact numbers, exact dates, and exact consequences. Hours passed. Something strange slowly became impossible to ignore. The humans never argued. Not once. Even when openly insulted. Finally, Commander the Los leaned back in his chair. "I have studied your species for years." No one interrupted him. "You fascinate me." He folded his hands together. During the opening years of this war, humanity fought like cornered predators. His eyes narrowed. "You destroyed entire battle groups with tactics our academies had never imagined." Silence settled across the chamber. "But then," his voice became almost amused, "you changed. You retreated. You accepted defeats. You abandoned worlds. You asked for negotiations." He smiled. "Tell me, Admiral, were those first victories simply luck?" The cameras focused on Admiral Ward. Billions waited. She looked directly into Thalos' eyes. "No." "Then what happened?" "We learned." A small frown appeared on his face. "Learned what?" "That winning battles and winning wars are different things." Several Dominion officers laughed openly. Commander Thalos joined them. "You call this learning?" He gestured toward the treaty resting between them. "You crossed half the galaxy asking for peace." General Hale finally spoke. "We crossed half the galaxy offering peace." "There is a difference." Thalos smiled again. "A difference only the defeated would believe." General Hale didn't respond immediately. Instead, he quietly looked around the chamber. His eyes paused briefly on several security officers positioned near the exits. Only for a moment. Then he looked back toward Thalos. "Perhaps." The negotiations continued. By evening, remarkably little remained unresolved. Even several neutral observers admitted the treaty looked surprisingly balanced. Neither side appeared humiliated. Neither side appeared victorious. For the first time in years, genuine optimism spread through the Concord Hall. When the session finally ended, reporters rushed outside to deliver hopeful broadcasts. Markets across multiple worlds began climbing. Families separated by war started believing they might soon see one another again. Inside the private residential wing reserved for diplomats, however, the atmosphere felt very different. General Hale stood alone beside the observation window overlooking the stars. He wasn't watching the view. He was watching reflections in the glass. Admiral Ward entered quietly. "You noticed it too." He nodded once. "The guards." She folded her arms. "They changed shifts 3 times. Not normal. And they're counting exits." Before she could answer, Ambassador Reyes entered carrying her tablet. "I checked station security records." She placed the device on the table. Half the personnel assigned tomorrow weren't originally scheduled. Ward looked at her. "Replacement orders?" "No." No explanation. General Hale finally turned away from the window. "The Dominion officers aren't behaving like diplomats. They're behaving like soldiers before an operation." Silence filled the room. Admiral Ward slowly sat down. Outside, thousands of stars burned peacefully against the darkness. "If we're wrong..." Reyes finished her sentence. "Tomorrow ends a war." Ward nodded. "And if we're right..." No one answered immediately. General Hale looked toward the treaty resting on the desk. Then he quietly spoke words neither woman wanted to hear. "If something happens tomorrow, everything changes." The room became completely silent. Far beyond the observation window, hidden somewhere inside humanity's vast territory, countless forgotten facilities remained asleep. Waiting. Praying. Never to be needed. None of the 3 humans knew with certainty whether tomorrow would bring peace, or awaken something that had been buried for longer than anyone dared remember. Morning arrived beneath a sky so clear that even veteran diplomats allowed themselves a moment of hope. The Grand Assembly Chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from more than 80 civilizations filled the galleries overlooking the circular hall. News drones hovered silently beneath the vaulted ceiling while translators prepared to broadcast every word into thousands of languages. Today was supposed to become the day history remembered. The treaty rested on a crystal pedestal at the center of the room. One signature from each delegation. 15 years of bloodshed would finally end. Admiral Evelyn Ward entered first. General Marcus Hale followed 1 pace behind. Ambassador Sophia Reyes carried the treaty itself. None of them smiled. None of them celebrated. Real peace, Ward often believed, should never begin with celebration. It should begin with responsibility. Across the chamber, High Commander Zarek Thalos waited beside his delegation. Unlike the previous day, he looked almost relaxed. His confidence unsettled Hale immediately. He quietly scanned the chamber once more. The guards. Different again. More numerous. Yet somehow less noticeable. Several stood among journalists. Others blended into the diplomatic escorts. Every instinct developed through 40 years of warfare whispered the same warning. Something was wrong. Ward noticed him watching. She spoke without moving her lips. Confirmed. He answered just as quietly. I don't like this. Reyes kept walking. The cameras are live. We continue. The chamber doors sealed shut behind them. The ceremony began. One neutral representative welcomed every delegation before stepping away from the podium. The future of our galaxy now rests in your hands. Polite applause echoed through the chamber. Ward approached the treaty first. She signed her name with slow, careful strokes. The cameras zoomed closer. Millions watched the pen leave the page. Applause spread again. Now it was Thalos' turn. He walked toward the pedestal without urgency. For several long seconds he simply stared at the treaty. His expression became impossible to read. Then, he smiled. Not with relief. Not with satisfaction. With certainty. General Hale moved half a step forward. Every muscle in his body tightened. Admiral! Ward heard the warning. Too late. The Los slowly raised one hand. Several Dominion officers smiled at exactly the same moment. The sound came first. Metal. Dozens of hidden magnetic locks disengaged simultaneously throughout the chamber. Weapons appeared where none should have existed. Honor guards turned. Journalists reached beneath recording equipment. Diplomatic assistants drew concealed pistols. The entire room transformed in less than 2 seconds. General Hale lunged toward Ward. Down! The first shot shattered the silence. Then another. Then hundreds. Panic exploded across the assembly hall. Delegates screamed. Security officers reached for weapons they were forbidden to carry. Recording drones continued broadcasting everything without interruption. Across the galaxy, billions watched in horror. Ward shoved Reyes behind the treaty pedestal just as another burst of fire tore through the chamber. Glass exploded. Marble shattered. Smoke filled the air. General Hale grabbed a fallen security shield and threw himself between the attackers and the 2 women. He knew immediately there were too many. Far too many. This had been planned long before negotiations ever began. Ward looked toward the Los. He hadn't moved. He simply watched. Calm. Cold. Certain. You came seeking peace, he called across the chaos. You should have remembered. The Dominion accepts surrender. Not equality. Another volley struck the defensive shield. Hale staggered backward. Ward reached for the emergency alarm. Nothing happened. Communications had already been disabled. Reyes looked around desperately. There has to be another exit. There isn't. Hale's voice remained strangely calm. There never was. More armed officers poured into the chamber. Every escape route disappeared. Ward understood everything. The peaceful negotiations. The balanced treaty. The cameras. The audience. This had never been diplomacy. It had been a public execution. Designed to remind the galaxy exactly who ruled it. She looked toward the Los one final time. You've condemned far more than us. He laughed softly. I've condemned fear. No. Ward answered quietly. You've awakened consequence. For the first time since entering the chamber. The Los frowned. He didn't understand. Another burst of fire echoed through the hall. The broadcasts suddenly ended. Across the galaxy, every screen froze. Silence followed. Far away. Very far away. On a forgotten colony world that appeared on almost no modern star charts. Nothing happened. For exactly 4 seconds. Then, deep beneath layers of ancient stone, inside a facility erased from every official record, dark monitors flickered. Emergency power activated. Rows of silent servers awakened together. A single crimson message appeared across every display. Trinity Protocol confirmed. Authorization complete. The elderly watch officer stared at the screen as though it belonged to another lifetime. His coffee cup slipped from trembling fingers. It shattered across the floor. No. He whispered. His voice barely carried through the empty command center. No. His hands shook violently as he reached for the emergency communicator. Central Command. Static. Then another voice answered. "This is Central." The old officer swallowed. His throat felt impossibly dry. "They're gone." Silence. Repeat. "They're all gone." Another pause. Then only one question. "Confirmation level?" The old man looked back toward the glowing monitor. 3 names had appeared beneath the activation notice. Admiral Evelyn Ward, General Marcus Hale, Ambassador Sophia Reyes. Each name carried the same status. Life signs terminated. He closed his eyes. They died together. Another long silence followed. Then someone on the other end whispered words that had not been spoken aloud in 15 years. "So, it finally happened. Across human space. Buried beneath mining colonies. Hidden inside abandoned orbital stations. Concealed within merchant convoys that had crossed ordinary trade routes for over a decade. Systems quietly awakened. Engines that had never officially existed began drawing power. Encrypted communication arrays came online. Docking clamps released. Thousands of officers received identical priority messages. No speeches. No explanations. Only 3 words. Protocol active. Prepare immediately. Somewhere inside a disguised civilian freighter, an aging captain stared at the notification glowing across his console. He had waited 15 years without believing this day would ever come. Slowly, he stood. Around him, crew members stopped working. Nobody asked questions. Nobody celebrated. They already knew exactly what those 3 words meant. The captain looked through the forward viewport toward the endless stars. Then he spoke quietly. "The waiting is over." Captain Nathan Cross stood motionless on the bridge of the civilian cargo ship Mercy Dawn. At least, that was the name painted across its weathered hull. For 15 years, the ship had carried grain, mining equipment, medical supplies, and every other cargo listed in public trade records. Every inspection had confirmed the same thing. A harmless freighter. Slow. Old. Forgettable. Only its crew knew the truth. Nathan looked once more at the glowing message suspended above the command console. Trinity Protocol active. No authorization codes followed. No commander issued further instructions. There was no need. The protocol had already decided. "Captain." His executive officer finally broke the silence. "Confirmation." Nathan nodded once. "Confirmed. The founders are gone." Nobody spoke again. Several younger crew members lowered their heads. Most had never met Admiral Ward or General Hale. But every one of them had spent years training under officers who had. To them, the 3 founders were more than commanders. They were the reason humanity still existed. Nathan slowly walked toward the center of the bridge. Broadcast internal priority. A calm female voice echoed throughout the ship. "All personnel. Operation Dawn begins immediately. The waiting period has ended." Across every deck, ordinary life disappeared. Cargo containers split open. False walls folded inward. Entire sections of the freighter transformed before stunned civilian inspectors stationed at nearby docks could understand what they were seeing. Merchant cranes withdrew. Hidden missile batteries rose into position. Heavy armor emerged beneath layers of civilian plating. The rusted transport vessel vanished. In its place stood a sleek gray warship that no Dominion intelligence report had ever mentioned. The transformation lasted less than 4 minutes. It was happening everywhere. Mining stations opened sealed hangars hidden beneath asteroid surfaces. Research vessels deployed fighter squadrons concealed inside scientific laboratories. Deep space refueling platforms unlocked massive dry docks buried beneath their foundations. For 15 years, humanity had hidden an entire navy in plain sight. Not because they lacked strength. Because strength revealed too early would have changed nothing. Patience had always been the greater weapon. On the bridge, Nathan studied the tactical display. Green lights continued appearing across human territory. 1, 10, 50, then hundreds. Every light represented another hidden vessel awakening. Another crew reporting ready. Another promise made 15 years earlier finally fulfilled. His communications officer looked up. No fleet orders. Nathan smiled faintly. There won't be. The protocol is coordinating everything. So, we're following an AI? No. He shook his head. We're following a plan. A plan written by people who expected today long before we did. A new transmission appeared. Primary target package received. Nathan opened the file. The bridge fell silent. It wasn't a list of planets. It wasn't civilian infrastructure. It wasn't population centers. Every target carried the same classification. Command responsibility. Every individual listed had directly approved, planned, supplied, or executed the murders inside the Concord Hall. Nothing more. Nothing less. His weapons officer quietly whispered, "No civilians." Nathan nodded. Never civilians. That was the Founder's first rule. Meanwhile, hundreds of light-years away, High Commander Zarek Thalos stood before the Imperial Council surrounded by cheering officers. The execution footage had already spread across the Dominion. Crowds celebrated in the streets. News anchors called it humanity's final humiliation. The war, one broadcaster proudly declared, ended this morning. Thalos allowed himself a satisfied smile. He had eliminated humanity's most respected leadership before every civilization in existence. No species would dare challenge Dominion authority again. An elderly council member remained seated. Councillor Lyris never applauded. Instead, she watched Thalos with growing concern. "Commander." He turned toward her. "You seem troubled." "I am." "The humans. What about them?" "They accepted every insult." "So, they never lost control." Thalos laughed. "They were broken." "No," she answered quietly. "They were waiting." His smile faded slightly. Before he could respond, the chamber doors burst open. An exhausted communications officer hurried inside. "Commander, what is it?" "We've lost contact with Outpost 17. Thalos frowned. "A technical failure?" "We thought so. But then—" The officer hesitated. 3 more military facilities stopped responding. Silence settled across the chamber. "Pirates?" "No." "Rebels?" "No." "What then?" "We don't know." Another officer entered. Then another. Each carried new reports. Fleet Depot Orion. Communications lost. Defense Platform Helios. Offline. Supply Command Vesta. Unreachable. The room grew quieter with every report. Thalos looked toward his intelligence director. "Explain." "We can't. Our long-range sensors show nothing. No enemy fleets. No invasions. No major engine signatures." Councillor Lyris slowly stood. "They aren't coming as fleets." Nobody answered. She walked toward the central star map. 15 years of intelligence records filled the display. Trade routes. Civilian traffic. Mining convoys. Cargo schedules. She pointed toward one shipping lane. "How many merchant vessels passed through here during the last decade?" "Thousands." "And here?" "Roughly the same." She looked back toward Thalos. "What if they weren't merchants?" The chamber became completely silent. Before anyone could answer, every screen suddenly flickered. One transmission forced itself through the Dominion military network. No signal source. No identification. Only a single sentence. "The first warning has been delivered." Then the transmission vanished. Thalos stared at the empty display. "Find them." His voice remained calm. Too calm. "I don't care how. I want every fleet mobilized." Across the Dominion, orders spread immediately. Warships departed their ports. Border patrols activated emergency protocols. Recon satellites expanded search patterns. Nothing appeared. The enemy remained invisible. Hours later, the first investigation fleet finally reached Outpost 17. The station still floated peacefully in orbit. Its structure remained untouched. No explosions. No hull damage. No fires. The boarding teams entered cautiously. Every corridor was empty. Every weapon system disabled. Every communications array dismantled with impossible precision. Not one soldier had been killed. Not one civilian harmed. On the central command display glowed a single crimson message. This was mercy. The next visit will not be. The investigation commander felt cold despite the warm air surrounding him. Back aboard the Mercy Dawn, Captain Nathan Cross watched dozens of similar reports arriving from hidden task forces throughout Dominion territory. Every operation had succeeded. Every objective completed. No civilian casualties. Minimal military deaths. Exactly as planned. His navigator looked toward him. They'll realize soon. Nathan nodded. I know. And when they do... He watched hundreds of hidden human warships silently converging toward the Dominion's inner systems. Then he answered with complete certainty. By then, it will already be too late. The Imperial Home Fleet had never been assembled in one place before. More than 1,000 warships floated in perfect formation above the fortress world of Karos, their engines illuminating the darkness like a second constellation. Massive defense platforms surrounded the planet while orbital cannons locked onto every known approach vector. For 3 centuries, no enemy fleet had ever reached this far into Dominion territory. High Commander Zarek the Los intended to make certain none ever would. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, Iron Judgment, watching hundreds of tactical displays update every second. Status. The operations officer answered immediately. All defensive formations complete. Outer fleets ready. Planetary shields at maximum output. Good. He folded his hands behind his back. If the humans intend revenge, they'll find only defeat. No one replied. Not because they agreed. Because confidence had become difficult to believe. Counselor Lyris quietly studied the tactical map. Something bothered her. The human attacks had never been reckless. Every strike had followed a pattern. Military command. Logistics. Communications. Nothing unnecessary. Nothing emotional. It wasn't vengeance. It was discipline. She finally broke the silence. They're already here. Several officers looked toward her. Our long-range sensors show nothing, one replied. She shook her head. They fooled those sensors for 15 years. What makes you think today is different? Before she could answer, every display aboard the flagship flickered. Not from damage. From intrusion. A calm female voice echoed across every speaker. Attention! This is Fleet Command of the Human Coalition. Every officer froze. No one understood how an enemy transmission had entered the most secure military network in the Dominion. The screen revealed Admiral Helena Brooks. She wore a simple gray uniform. No decorations. No ceremony. Only quiet determination. Commander the Los. Her voice never rose. 15 years ago, Admiral Evelyn Ward proposed peace. You answered with murder. Today, the consequences of that decision have reached your doorstep. The Los stepped closer to the display. You believe this fleet frightens me? No. Brooks answered calmly. I believe reality soon will. The transmission ended. At that exact moment, space itself seemed to change. Nothing exploded. Nothing flashed. Instead, the stars moved. Officers stared through the forward viewport. Dozens of ordinary cargo vessels drifting between defensive formations suddenly altered course. Mining barges. Supply ships. Fuel transports. Maintenance craft. Every vessel the Dominion had ignored for years. Their outer hulls separated. Civilian plating detached. Hidden armor emerged. Weapons unfolded from compartments that official records claimed did not exist. One cargo ship became a cruiser. Then another. Then another. Across every direction. Hundreds. The Dominion hadn't been invaded. The enemy had already been inside its borders. Waiting. The bridge fell silent. One frightened officer whispered, "They've been here." The whole time, Captain Nathan Cross watched the transformation from the bridge of the Mercy Dawn. His civilian disguise drifted away into space as heavy rail cannons rotated into firing position. Around him, hundreds of hidden warships completed the same transformation. No battle cry echoed through the fleet. No speeches. Only professionalism. His tactical officer looked toward him. Orders confirmed. Nathan nodded. Proceed. The human fleet moved. Not toward cities. Not toward civilians. Straight toward the Dominion command fleet. Precision missiles struck communication relays before defensive weapons could react. Electronic warfare blinded targeting systems. Entire squadrons lost contact with one another. Dominion commanders attempted to regroup. Every new formation collapsed within minutes. Not because humanity possessed more ships. Because humanity already knew every response the Dominion would choose. For 15 years they had studied them, prepared for them, simulated them. Commander Thalos watched battle groups disappear from his display one after another. Re-establish communications. No response, Commander. Redirect the Eastern Fleet. They're already surrounded. The reserve carriers disabled. Planetary defenses offline. Every answer sounded worse than the last. Lyris slowly closed her eyes. It wasn't patience born from weakness. It was preparation. Outside the viewport, the impossible continued. Human ships ignored retreating transports carrying civilians. Medical stations remained untouched. Escape corridors stayed open. Only military objectives disappeared from the tactical display. Nathan watched another target marker turn green. Communications headquarters. Secured. Orbital cannon array. Disabled. Command ship. Captured. Every operation matched the protocol exactly. Justice. Never cruelty. Finally, only one red marker remained. The Iron Judgment. Nathan inhaled slowly. Open a channel. Seconds later, the bridge of the Dominion flagship filled once more with Admiral Brooks' image. This time she spoke even more quietly. Commander Thalos. The war can end now. He stared at her. You've defeated my fleet. You've reached my flagship. What more do you want? Brooks answered without hesitation. The same thing Admiral Ward wanted. Peace. He laughed bitterly. After this. Especially after this. Silence stretched between them. Brooks continued. We could destroy your capital. We won't. We could occupy your worlds. We won't. We could become the empire you feared. We won't. We require only one condition. Surrender every individual responsible for the murders at Concord Hall. Accept a joint tribunal. Sign a treaty without hidden weapons. And this fleet. She looked briefly through her own viewport toward hundreds of waiting human warships. Returns home. No threats followed. No dramatic countdown. Only silence. Commander Thalos looked around his shattered bridge. Most of his officers were wounded. Others simply looked exhausted. For the first time in decades, no one expected victory. He finally turned toward Counselor Lyris. You warned me. She nodded once. I did. I believed patience meant fear. No. She answered softly. It meant discipline. He lowered his head. Signal every remaining ship. The communications officer looked at him in disbelief. Commander. Stand down. No one moved. His voice became firmer. That is an order. Across Dominion space, one by one, weapons powered down. Human targeting systems immediately ceased firing. The battle ended almost as quietly as it had begun. 3 months later, the Concord Hall reopened. Not for celebration. For justice. Commander Thalos stood before a joint tribunal beside every officer directly involved in the assassination of Admiral Ward, General Hale, and Ambassador Reyes. He offered no excuses. Only one statement. I mistook restraint for weakness. I will not make that mistake again. He accepted the sentence without protest. Outside the tribunal, a new treaty waited. Remarkably, it looked almost identical to the one abandoned on the chamber floor months earlier. Only now both civilizations understood its value. On Earth, overlooking a quiet valley filled with white stone monuments, thousands gathered beneath a clear morning sky. 3 names were carved into polished granite: Admiral Evelyn Ward, General Marcus Hale, Ambassador Sophia Reyes. Fleet Admiral Helena Brooks stood before the memorial. Her words carried across every human colony and every Dominion world. They did not prepare for war because they wanted it. They prepared because they hoped no one would ever force it. She looked toward the 3 monuments. The galaxy believed humanity survived because it fought harder. She gently shook her head. It survived because it endured longer. The wind moved softly through the valley. Around the memorial stood veterans from both civilizations. Not as enemies, as witnesses. The stars had learned a lesson that would endure for generations. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been its fleets. It had always been its patience. And the cost of underestimating that patience had become a warning the entire galaxy would never forget.